Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I'm your host, Dave Mabel. Thanks for tuning in. Now, before we get into today's episode, that's actually hard to say, I've got a reminder for you to score some savings from Core 4 on August 17th. It is a race where no surface is left untouched. We've got a great deal. If you use the code CORE4BikeTalk at checkout, the first 14 people to do so will get 14% off their entry fee. So hurry up and sign up soon because those spots are going fast. In addition to getting a great discount, you'll be supporting this podcast as Core 4 will match that amount to help Bike Talk with Dave. So I will actually give you permission to pause this episode. Again, you got to come back and head over to core4.bike. Check out the details and get signed up right now. We'll have more on that great race during today's show, so strap on your helmets and let's go. Today we're talking about a guy who died nearly 30 years ago, which might seem weird, but the fact is his name continues to be associated with some of the biggest races in the Midwest and even the world. Chris Lillig was a cyclist living and working in Iowa City, Iowa. You've heard of that place. It's where Caitlin Clark played college ball. This is a cycling show. Iowa City played host to the Jingle Cross World Cup. You remember that? And the Chris Lillig Friday night under the lights up Mount Crumpet. What a great night that was. Anyway, Chris was killed by a drunk driver in 1996, but continues to impact our lives today. In his memory, River Products Company, which is a rock company who crushes stone for so many miles of gravel roads in the Midwest, and where Chris worked as an accountant. They are sponsoring the Stone Crusher 100-mile race at Core 4 this year and is putting up a $10,000 prize purse for the top men and women in the race. So I thought we should get to know who this Chris Lillig dude was and why he meant so much that his name continues to be associated with one of the top multi-surface races today. So we're talking today with a couple of guys who rode with, raced with, and knew him best, Greg Duethman and Ken Lefler. They're both well known for their contributions to the local cycling community. One is a bike race director and the other a bike shop owner for many years. And they've done so much more. So now that we know the why of this episode, let's dive in with Greg and Kenny and get to know Chris Lillig. Hey guys, welcome to Bike Talk with Dave. I'm stoked we found a time to come on and talk about Chris Lillig, which is a name that, I feel like if you race bikes in the Midwest, you know that name, Chris Lillig. So I'm stoked to dive into who Chris Lillig was and why we still know his name, which I think is super cool. But I've got on the show Greg Duethman and Ken Lefler. Ken, can I call you Kenny?
You can.
You said that a little hesitantly, like that's how we affectionately know you for sure. It's Kenny. Like everyone knows Kenny in Kenny's garage. But anyway, Ken Lefler, Iowa City kids.
Very cool. Well, and thanks for having us on, and thanks for hosting, Dave. And yeah, Kenny and I, real quickly, it goes back a minute, right? So when Kenny and I first met was I'm talking like 1992. He had just opened.
I would say earlier than that.
Was it 91, 90?
I moved here in 89. I would say it was 90.
90? Okay. There you go. That lines up. 90. So when we first met, I was racing for a team out of Cedar Rapids, and we had just gotten Schwinn bikes, frame sets, and I took my bike to Kenny to have him put it together. And, excuse me, and basically from that time on, meeting he and his wife Luann, it was just a very engaging relationship. And then with my wife Kathy, we would do things like going to Mickey's here in Iowa City every Monday night for burger night. And wow, it's just amazing to think just all the different adventures, heartaches, everything that we've shared, obviously including the loss of Chris Lillig. So that's really the motivator of keeping his spirit alive, is what we've all shared in the past. And Chris was just such one of these people. I think, Kenny, I hate to steal your line on this, but really, Chris was one of those people who had zero enemies. I mean, literally, and he enjoyed other people so much. He was a bit of a recluse, and that, you wouldn't always see him out on. He wouldn't like call you up for a ride necessarily, but he certainly made the group rides. And at the time, the group rides in Iowa City were 40 people was not uncommon to have on the group rides, and so keeping his memory alive is very important for one basic reason, is just because what an amazing person he was. And also, shout out to River Products Company, which we'll get into a little bit more. They really have stepped forward to keep that memory alive as well.
Yeah, strong relationships all the way around there. And I don't know, 1990 was just like 3 or 4 years ago, wasn't it? It's not all that long.
Yeah, not
Right.
that long ago.
Sure. Yeah.
Um,
And but no, I still remember going into Kenny's shop that was over on First Avenue in Iowa City on the east side there. And I was just like, "You did what now? You like moved up here in a snowstorm or something. Is that right, Kenny? Wasn't that
I did. I moved up here. Well, I opened on Friday the 13th, February.
right?"
oh boy.
I moved everything up in a snowstorm and, yeah, opened a shop.
Why'd you open a shop in Iowa City? Where'd you move from?
I moved from Burlington, Iowa.
Oh, sure, I know Burlington. I've heard of that.
Yeah, I managed the shop down there for a long time. And, yeah, it was time to go out on my own. And Iowa City, wouldn't say it was available, but they kind of made it available. And yeah, it was an opportunity. So,
Huh.
and I'm happy I did it, because I do like Iowa City, and the people I've met here have been lifelong friends. So it was good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's yeah, it's a good long time. Almost as long as I've been racing. You've been in Iowa City.
So the funny thing is, I met Chris long before that. I was doing some distance cycling way back, and I was helping a buddy train for an event called BAM, which was bike across Missouri. So it was St. Louis to Kansas City and back. And I went down to watch the finish, and my buddy got fourth place. And he said, that guy sitting over there on the curb drinking a 2 liter of Mountain Dew won. And I went over to meet him, and it was this smiling, happy kid named Chris Lillig, who had just won it and was still just as smiling and as happy as could be. And I don't know, sat there on the curb and talked to him for about a half an hour, and that was it. And then I was already kind of planning on moving to Iowa City at the time, and so became friends right away.
So he was an Iowa City kid. How far is that? I mean, I feel like that'd be a 500 or 600 mile ride.
Yeah, I think it was 550 at the time.
That's a long ways. And you keep saying kid. How old was he?
Oh, I mean, I say kid, but I'm sure he was in his mid-20s then.
Oh, he was old then. Okay. Dig it.
Yeah.
Dig it. Um, uh, so, you guys both have a long relationship with Duethman. Greg, I want to help people understand your relationship as well, because when you moved to Iowa City, you didn't just sit around and let other people do the work. You put your shoulder to the wheel and ran the Old Capital Crit for a number of years.
Yeah. So as that turned out, that at that time I was racing for another team, Iowa City Spoke and Ski, and the owner of that bike shop, Lloyd Tabing, who is he in Sweden now? Kenny, is that right? I believe.
He is. I stay in touch with Lloyd all the time.
Very cool. Yeah. And he basically was like, you know what? I can't run the shop and do this at the same time. So fortunately, I had a very strong support crew, including Kenny, Joanne Higgins, and Paul Denninger, and just countless other folks here in the Iowa City area to help out a wonderful core group. And we did two things: is we took on the team, and then we also, Old Capital Criterium was our race, was our event. And I think it was 2 or 3 years. Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong on the dates there, but I do know it was 2001 is when River Products Company stepped forward and said, we want to be a part of this. And this is how we want to be a part of it. And that's really where it took off from there. And so...
Yep, I think that's correct.
Okay.
It's been around. Old Capital Criterium's been around for a long time. I don't know when it started, but it was literally my first USCF. Old guys will know what I'm saying there. It was my first USCF race, and Cat 4, and I ended up third in that thing. That was kind of fun. That was a fun race. I just remember I was told by my mentor, Randy Gaffney, who some old folks from Iowa might remember, and he's lived in Colorado since, 86 or 7. Well, 87, because he was around in 86. He's like, just get to the front. And back then, and I don't really understand this. We should actually have a conversation about why this was. But, I mean, there were fields of 120, 130 in the Cat 4 race, Cat 3 race, Cat 1, 2 Pro. I mean, pros, it was interesting. And I don't know if it's because there were fewer races or what. But I feel like more people race now, but if you get 40 guys at a line, it's a lot. But anyway, there are 130 guys, and I remember going up Old Capital, the hill. We went around Old Capital, which was downhill, 90-degree turn, a few blocks, 90-degree turn, and straight back up that hill. And I remember looking back, going up one of those hills, and I was like, hey, guys, we're away. Let's go. And there were 6 of us. And we just team time trialed it to the line, which was unique for Cat 4s. But that was my very first race. So I have very fond memories of Iowa City and the Old Capital Criterium. So it was I don't know, it was cool to have it become, not really, I mean, it's not cool to have a memorial ride, but it was served as the Chris Lillig, it was part of the Chris Lillig Memorial Cup, and it was the Chris Lillig race for a number of years. But who was Chris Lillig? Why are we talking about him? And how did he end up getting his name on Old Capital Crit?
Well, first and foremost, just local legend as far as bike racing here. And again, he was a Cat 2, Kenny. Do I have that right, or was he a 1? I can't remember.
He was a Cat 2. I mean, he raced a lot of Cat 4 races. I mean, he came up slow. He did distance stuff, and then he started Cat 4 racing. And I can't remember the figure, but it was some astronomical amount of Cat 4 races that he raced because he just liked it.
Yeah.
And then he raced for me as a Cat 3, and then became a Cat 2, and was a decent Cat 2. But he was just a really likable, strong guy. I mean, he was a great teammate. He was a great guy to have on your team. But yeah, he was just that guy. He was the guy you wanted to go riding with because, one, he'd look after you.
Yeah.
He's the guy that would come. If you got dropped early, he's the guy that would come back and get you.
And there you go. And one little dirty secret that I'll share, and this will only be between us 3, but I guess now it's going to go out to a lot more people. Chris Lillig actually did not like the Old Capital Criterium.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's
he was more
interesting.
of a, as Kenny alluded to, he was more of a time trialist and road racer. So to put him in a criterium was not always his forte, if you will. He would do it because it was the local race, and at that time, River Products Company had their office in downtown Iowa City. So, what better thing than to showcase your stuff in front of your office mates, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
characteristic of him as well that I remember so fondly was his laugh. And so I would go up to him before the Old Capitol, and I'm like, are you going to attack off the front? Or are you going to... And his laugh was like this. No. Did I have that fairly close, Ken?
Yeah, you about nailed that.
Not a chance. No.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, so what happened to him?
So that was a day of infamy, man. That was I remember that well. March of '96.
6. Yeah.
March of '96. Um, I had been uh, riding on Sunday morning. Was kind of a thing with another fallen cyclist that we all know well, Dan Bockenstead from the Dubuque
For
area,
sure.
Blockhead, as he was affectionately known.
Yep.
So Blockhead and I would go out and ride on Sunday mornings. Well, that particular Sunday morning, I ride over towards Blockhead's place, and I see him walking up Prairie du Chien Road here in Iowa City. And I was like, wow, that's weird. Why is he? And he's in like street clothes and stuff. And I was just like, this has got a bad vibe. So I barely even said two words to him, like, what up? Whatever. And he's like, Chris Lillig was killed last night. And it'll take me a minute. It was so hard to process that the fact that Chris was just like that gone. I don't know. So I obviously we did not ride that day. I just went back home, and still, it still baffles me. It's weird to think
Yeah.
it's that long ago, and I still struggle.
Yeah, for sure.
I still don't like riding on that road, and
Yeah,
it's he got hit by a drunk driver, and I mean it's horrible. All of it was horribly bad. The guy ran from the scene and hit his car, and did everything that you should not do. I will say he was ultimately arrested, and he did serve his entire time in jail. I think it was 19 years in all.
Which doesn't
I don't
feel
know if
like
that's enough.
it's long enough.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't know if that's enough. And if you know the guy's history, he had 19 alcohol-related arrests in 19 years,
oh wow.
and that's tough for me.
Yep.
That's really tough for me.
Yeah.
and it's something I had to go back and do a little history on this as well, just to make sure. Like I said, many images and conversations, things like that, obviously are pretty raw still and very vivid. But I do want to quote something. Kenny was actually at the trial,
Oh
and
wow.
yeah, and I just remember when Kenny was interviewed by the Daily Iowan, the newspaper here, and he was just like, what he said about Chris was this: he was an absolutely great guy. He said, I think a lot of people once they die, they're sort of lifted to godlike status, but with Chris, it really is true. And I don't know, Kenny, how you, excuse me, how you composed yourself enough to put that together, just because he was truly one of the nicest, most respected guys in the racing community, and that encapsulated everything right there. And yeah, he left a young wife, here, and obviously a huge community of friends, and his family, obviously, as well as parents. He was an only child. So just the whole sheer loss of that life in such a tragic fashion, and it's hard to ride past that exact spot anymore. We always, if you have any water left in your bottle, we still sprinkle a little water there. So, and
Wow, I
then
love
all
that.
you have to do, Dave, to keep it, keep that imagery fresh with everybody, or really to give them a nice visual of it. If you go out to River Products Company now, if you go out to their office, there is a memorial to him of some form, fashion on every wall.
Oh wow.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm
Yeah, whether it's a poem that he wrote, or whether it's the semi truck and trailer that has a huge rock stone on it that has Chris's name on it, that Chris's father made, or the picture of Tom Scott, the CEO of River Products, and has Teresa Lillig, Chris's widow, and then the winner of the Cat 1 and 2 women's races, and where he's handing out the award, or he and Teresa are handing out the award. That picture is hanging up out there. So like I said, there's just little memorials everywhere you look.
Yeah, I'm curious about. I mean, I was gone from 90 to 95, 90 to 96. I was in Ohio those years. And so I didn't know Chris, but I certainly know the name. And I know the name because of the Old Capital Criterium, of the Iowa City Road Race, of Jingle Cross, of the Iowa Memorial Cup, which was a series of races throughout the summer that we had. And now Core 4 is the Stone Crusher 100 miler presented by River Products Company in honor, in memory of Chris Lillig. So, I mean, 2000, 2001, for the past 25 years just about, we've been keeping Chris's name, image, and likeness in the front of our minds through all these races. And not just little races, but the best races in the state, from Old Capital Crit to the Memorial Cup to, I mean, Jingle Cross Friday night. Like, yeah, I know we had World Cups, but Friday night was it. Up Mount Crumpet, right. Like that was a scene, right? And to have Chris Lillig's name be part of that, like he's become part of my life, and I never met him. So I think it's super cool. What was the relationship with Chris Lillig and River Products Company?
So Chris Lillig's parents, Mick or Mike, well, actually he's known as, his name's Mike, but was known as Mick. And then his wife, or his mom, Jane, they were co-owners of River Products along with Tom Scott. And like I said, this is a group of folks from Keota, Iowa, little town Iowa, right? And the philanthropic work that they've done throughout the years is just enormous. You know, from Special Olympics to other local events, things like that. They're very community based, and so that's where it started, was with you know, Chris's parents and Tom Scott really being the driver on that as well. And they formed a foundation, the River Products Company Foundation. And 2001 is when they stepped forward and said, you know, we want to be a part of this, and this is what we want to do. And so that was the first year that it was the Chris Lillig Memorial Cup was part of the Old Capital Criterium. And I'll tell you, it was, in so many ways, it was almost like surreal. And Kenny, feel free to interject in this, just like getting the call from Kenny LeBay, who at that time was racing for the U.S. Postal Team, calling me up and saying, hey, myself and Robbie Ventura want to come out for your race. And I was like, you know, this is Greg Duethman. I live in Iowa City. Is that what you, were you, you know, I think you might have been wanting to call somebody else, you know.
You wanted the Greg Duethman in Boulder, Colorado,
yeah,
right?
You want Core States, you want Tour of Georgia or something, right? And he's like, nope, pretty sure I got the right guy. And he was like, yeah, I got your name from Kenny Lefler. And I was like, oh, well, okay. So just down to the minutia of how things worked out with that. And if you ever get a chance to have a conversation with Kenny LeBay, I would really encourage you to do that. Not only the fact that he's just such a wonderful storyteller. He has just, in his mailbag, if you will, because he is a postal carrier, right? He has so many stories. And just to typify how things went that weekend, so we had the road race the day before out near Kelowna, and I know, Dave, you've done that. Kenny, you've done that one before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so that's
I've done it. I didn't say I like it, but I've done it.
So I go up and I talk
Iowa is not flat.
Not flat. No. So I go up to talk to Kenny, and I'm like, hey, if, you know, after the road race, we're going to have a juniors dinner downtown Iowa City, and I'd be more than happy to buy you and Robbie Ventura a meal if you come down and, just if one or both of you want to say something to these junior racers. So we got 15 junior racers and their parents there, and I introduced Kenny, and he starts off first and he goes, well, here's how things transpired for me. He goes, I'm a bike racer, always been a bike racer, loved bike racing, out of Chicago area. And he goes, my grandfather told me, you know what, you're going to have to get a day job as well. And you just will go with the post office because you'll always have a job, pretty much guaranteed, right? So then he ends up not quite cutting it through the professional or, trying to get into the pro ranks for cycling. But he has his job as a mail carrier. So, and he's like, I just kept racing. Well, then he did I think, Kenny, was it 24 hours of, not Moab, 24 hours of Utah, some race down there, just heinous, nasty race, right? And he ends up winning it. And he keeps writing to the director sportif for U.S. Postal saying, wouldn't it be great if you had a bike racer on your team who was actually a postal carrier as well? Well, it didn't resonate finally until he did that, and I believe it was Lance Armstrong looked at it and said, give the guy a shot on our domestic squad, whatever, I don't care, right? And then they brought along Robbie Ventura as well because he was the standout Northbrook track racer. So I love that. And what Kenny tells then in his story is, as he's standing in front of 15 of these junior racers, and we all know that, when you first start out in racing, you think, I can do this. I mean, how hard can it be, right? And then after your first 20 crashes and other things, you're like, wow, this is really heinous. Right?
Yep. You mean first 20 crashes in the first 20 days?
Right.
Those 20 crashes?
Yeah. So Kenny goes on with the story. He's like, so I just want to level set for you. He goes, first of all, how many of the 15 of you racers here, and this was a mix of young men and women, he goes, how many of you want to be professional racers? 15 hands go up, right? Okay, you have those aspirations. He goes, that's great. He goes, you have to go in. Cycling is so competitive. You have to go in with that mindset of saying, yes, I deserve to move on to that next level. I have aspirations of this could be a career for me, right? So he goes, well, that's good. But let me level set for you the importance of other things in your life, and that being school, your family, other activities that you do, your church, things, whatever that you're part of, other things in your community where you're an active participant, right? Said there are basically, give or take, 900,000 postal carriers throughout the world, right? I'm the only one that made it as a professional cyclist. So he said, literally a 1 in a million shot. So keep that in mind. And I was like, oh my God, and just the look on their faces, and their parents were like applauding. They're like, yes, see, I told you.
Thank you.
That's right.
That's funny.
Yes. Yeah. And then the next day at the Old Cap Chris Lillig Memorial Cup, Kenny LeBay ends up winning. Right, and also I can't remember. Kenny Lefler, you could help me out with this as far as somebody donated a wheel set. It might have been Racket Master Bike and Ski, where Jeff Perrell was the manager at the time. Donated a Roval wheel set. That's who it was. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so I let Kenny know that. I said, hey, we've got a wheel set for a preem and all that. And he goes, oh, let me go over and tell Robbie that. And sure enough, Robbie won the wheel set in a preem. Go figure, Mr. Sprinter, right? And then Kenny LeBay ends up winning the next day, winning the Old Capital Criterium, the first Chris Lillig Memorial Cup. That's in 2001. And then it was just Mick and Jane Lillig were there along with Tom Scott to present the cup to him. You just couldn't have asked for, anything better to come all together like that. Until you flash forward 21 years later, and Kenny LeBay comes to be the announcer for the C1 event at Jingle Cross, right?
Mm-hmm.
he brings the cup with him, and he's the announcer for the Chris Lillig Memorial section, right? I was like, oh my God, that to think, hey, I'm going to bring this along because I'm the announcer for that. It just speaks volumes of the character of that person, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Um, so Old Capital Crit, rest in peace.
Yeah.
The Memorial Cup of the series of races around the state, rest in peace. Jingle Cross, rest in peace. Rising like the phoenix out of the ashes, Core 4, where no surface is left untouched. How did this come to be? This was a huge announcement a month or two ago. That
It brings up a good point though, because I hear I hear racing is dead, and uh, I think things are just changing. The landscape is changing because you look at Core 4 last year, and there was 1,000 people. There's 1,000 people there for a shared event, in of all abilities. I don't know how many people competed in the 350 people maybe competed in the 110-mile race. That's a lot of people. I mean, that really is a lot of people.
It is a lot of people for sure.
And yeah, back in the day, we had fields of I started Cat 3 races with 150 people in them, and it was definitely a different time, and the crit scene is definitely different now, but we have events like that going on, and it's a changing landscape, and I personally I think that I think Chris of all people would embrace the whole gravel thing, the whole distance 100-mile gravel races. I think that he would have freaking loved it.
He would have.
I think that's part of it, and then then it goes back to those guys want to continue that legacy, and they want that name to still be part of cycling, to honor honor him and his love of cycling. And then enter Mr. Duethman, and that's the real push to make that happen.
Good job, Duethman.
Well, thank you, Kenny. Well, let's not forget our number one moto leader of the race, Mr. Lefler. Nobody rides moto better.
Well, to ride moto in that race is that takes talent for sure.
Absolutely.
It's not just gravel. Like the gravel's not just gravel. We've got grass. We've got. They're not even B roads.
I'm not doing sugar bottom on the moto.
Well, that's fair, but there's some hard stuff. Like I got off my bike and walked through a farm field. So yeah,
I did ride those.
Yeah, for sure you did, and that does take talent for sure.
Yeah. And we do have to take
from years on the bike.
Yeah, we have to take a quick pause here for the fact that, remember, Dave, I told you when we were talking offline that I was gonna.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah.
What's with the word gravel?
Yeah.
Oh, stone.
Crushed stone.
Crushed stone roads.
Yes. So River Products
Absolutely.
Company is a crushed stone company. Gravel implies something completely different. But if you ever notice the quarries that River Products operates, they actually remove stone in a very environmentally concerned and proper way, and then they crush that stone. And so that's actually what becomes what we would call a gravel road, but it's actually technically a crushed stone, and that is why you see that this is the stone crusher. So Alex Boomeyer and I have worked very hard to make sure that we use the proper terminology, especially when we go into River Products Company, because everybody there, if you mention the word gravel, you get a very distinct cringe.
I appreciate knowing that. That's like legit. I thought you were joking when you said we can't call it gravel anymore, but
No.
So it's actually like the roads that we'll be riding on are crushed stone that came out of the River Products Company.
100%.
Out of all of the events that have been the Chris Lillig Memorial Cup, ride, race, whatever, this is the most perfect.
Absolutely. Right? You couldn't
I
ask
love
for
it
a better alignment here, right?
for sure.
And the
And
fact,
I don't think you mentioned that he was an accountant at River
oh my
Products
goodness.
Company.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Yes, and he was also an
So
accountant there.
it's
He and Tom Scott would burn the midnight oil. They were both these people who wouldn't start their day early in the morning, we'll say, but they certainly worked late. And
yeah,
yeah, so
that's awesome. I did not know that, and I never really thought about it being crushed stone versus gravel's something you like scoop out of the
it's river
I don't
rock.
know, you scoop
It's
out
it's
yeah, it's river rock.
yeah. You can
And
buy
it's
it.
round and it's hard to ride on. But crushed stone like sticks together and becomes, I mean, kind of becomes pavement
Yeah,
on a good day,
you have it
you
on
know?
your yep. You have it on your roads throughout rural Iowa. You have it on the beneath the foundation of your home or your driveway. That's all crushed stone. That is not gravel.
Huh, good to know. And learn something every day.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hmm.
Kenny, how do you like riding on that crushed stone?
I do it all the time.
I love it. Well, this freaking Core 4 is not just on crushed stone. It is, like I said, like through farm fields. I talked to Alex, the organizer, and he's like, "We've got some exciting stuff. I've got some permission to go across some private land, and that'll be interesting and fun." And this is not, of course, we've got Sugar Bottom. He's thrown in some single track in Coralville. Is that right? Could that be? We heading over to Coralville
Yep.
and just all kinds of stuff, and some pavement, so that you can sit up and kind of shake your back out and get your shoulders square again. Um, but it is a super fun, interesting, unique, entertaining. I don't know. I'm like the next word I want to say is hard, but we also don't want to discourage anyone. There are lots of options to choose from for mileage.
It's a
25, 40, 60, or 100.
not only the surfaces are diverse, but the distances are as well.
They
It's
are.
an
And
amazing speed event.
Yeah.
yep. So, Kenny, you might appreciate this with your experience throughout the years with kind of the elite level riders that have um, come through your world. But the Stone Crusher is sporting a $10,000 prize purse, which is pretty cool. And I've heard some names coming in. Kenny,
I,
do you know some folks coming in? Have you heard any rumblings?
I heard something today. I have to look it up.
Is it for public?
I don't know. Well, somebody texted to me, and they're not part of the organization. So I heard Reed Billman is coming, and I heard he's one of the fast guys. So
Oh, nice. I've heard a few other names as possibilities. Midwesterners, Chase Warwick, Eno Zavdalov.
Chase has done it before. So yeah,
Yep. And I think, and let me look here. One of the kids that was in the room with Kenny LeBay at that dinner that you were talking about
Hmm.
is has registered and is rolling around in eastern Iowa on August 17th. Vance Fletcher, and I think he's bringing Drew Dillman with him. He and Dillman were buddies from college, Marion College, and I think he's talking him into it. So I think we'll have some fire at the front. I think it'll be not just a fun race to be at, but it'll be a fun race to be a part of and to watch.
Yeah. And what's interesting, Vance, is he like 30 now, maybe? Is that
Yep.
ever? Dang, that's been because I just think of him as this junior racer, all like, yeah, I can win this, don't you worry. With Lowell Kellogg.
Nope.
I'm like, simmer down. You got.
Yeah, he was on the IS Corp with Lowell Kellogg for a long time. Who's so many great
so
names.
Lowell and I have a long history as well. Lowell's from Burlington. I'm from Burlington, Iowa. Lowell's from Burlington, Iowa. I've known Lowell since we went to high school together.
Very cool.
We've known each other since we were little kids.
So many good riders came out of the Iowa City crew. Rat,
Yep.
Lowell, freaking. I know that Randy and Scott Dixon spent time in Iowa City. Maybe more
Oh yeah.
Randy than Scott, but Scott would stop by, and man, he's a definite legend.
Yeah. And
And you guys remember
Van
my
Manken?
what's that?
Mike Van Manken?
Yep. Um, uh, Scott. Um,
Mercer,
yeah, Mercer.
Buzzsaw,
He was
Buzzsaw,
my buddy.
That's
Buzzsaw.
My,
Yep, he was my buddy.
my dad, as a dentist, would look at his teeth, which is how he got his name Buzzsaw, with the big gaps in his teeth. And my dad was like, I could so fix those right now.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Mercer and I started together on the Des Moines Cycle Club team. Our first year as Cat 4, so we were charging around Iowa City and Burlington at the Snake Alley Criterium and Moline, the Moline Criterium. That was awesome.
Yep.
And it's moved a few times and is now in Davenport. But what a great weekend!
Yep.
And all those great guys came out of
Well,
the
another,
Iowa City crew.
another standout from Burlington is Jason McCartney.
Jason
Who
McCartney.
started,
Jason
Iowa City.
McCartney.
Burlington and Iowa City.
who started
Yep,
at
yep.
Lefler's Schwinn. Absolutely. And
I still see him every single day.
yeah,
J-Mac every single day.
Every single day.
What's he up to?
I'm going to say that not one day goes by unless I'm out of town that I don't see him.
yeah.
Wow, what's he up to?
He runs a tree service here in town, and unfortunately, he does that out of my house.
Oh, you do see him every single day, don't you? He had some. I mean, he spent some good years, freaking on the world tour level.
10 years.
Yeah.
Does he still ride a bike much?
He rides a bike a little bit.
Yeah.
Just built a bike. He did that course at the University of Iowa and built a new gravel bike.
Oh yeah, with
And he's been riding it. You'll see him at Core 4 riding.
oh nice. What distance is he going?
I think he's doing a shorter one.
Yeah, dig
Yeah.
it. He
I don't think he wants to. I don't think he wants to do the 100.
Could you?
we would hold spring races here in Des Moines, and he would ride over from Iowa City, do the race, win it, and then ride home.
Oh, dude, I have so many stories. I've motor paced him so many millions. I have so many stories that we could take hours. You wouldn't believe them.
We could have volume.
Most people still don't believe them.
I believe you that we wouldn't believe them, but anyway, it'll be fun to see all these crew at the Core 4 this August.
Absolutely.
I don't know. How does somebody go about diving into this Core 4 thing and the Stone Crusher 100 presented by River Products Company?
Wow. Well, Kenny knows the course forwards and backwards, so he can probably speak most intuitively about this. I would say.
Well, I know the old course is forward and backwards, but it's going to be all new courses this year.
Is it all new? Will we recognize any of it?
A little bit. I mean, Sugar Bottom will be the same, but they're shaking it up quite a bit.
Huh.
So
Start
Could
and
be
finish at the
interesting.
same place?
start and finish at the same place, and then a lot of it's going to be different. So
Do we still have the
Yeah.
Jingle Cross Honor cyclocross finish?
I believe that to be true.
I loved that. I thought that was a cool nod to our days at Johnson County Fairgrounds.
Mhm.
Very cool. People can sign up at core4.bike. It's a great race, great event, great weekend, camping, food, drinks, music, all of the above. Just plan on moving into Iowa City for the weekend and
Yeah.
hanging out with all your biking friends, for sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
August 17th, man. If you haven't started
Yep.
training, you might wanna start. Get the quick program going.
That's an understatement. All right, guys. Thanks tons for coming on. Don't go away, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys and everyone else at Core 4.
Well, listen, thanks so much for hosting, and really to get together, especially with my friend from over 3 decades, Kenny Lefler. This was truly a wonderful experience. Thank you.
You bet. Great to see you guys.
Thanks to Greg and Ken for taking time to come on the pod today. I'm sure it's not easy to talk about a dear friend whose time on this earth was cut short in such a needless way, but whose name continues to rise up and remind us and motivate us to lace up our shoes, strap on our helmet, and head out on some beautiful crushed stone roads to get ready for the Core 4, Gravel Worlds, or whatever race or ride you've got ahead of you. Now don't forget, if you're getting ready to tackle the Core 4 on August 17th, use that code CORE4BikeTalk for 14% off. And if you're planning on surfing the rolling gravel seas of Nebraska at Gravel Worlds, use the code BikeTalkWithDave for 10% off. I really appreciate you tuning in each week, and I would really love it if you would rate and review this show on your favorite podcast platform. And if you want to support the show financially, just look for Bike Talk with Dave at buymeacoffee.com and drop a few coins in the cup. And be sure to check out the Bike Talk with Dave channel on YouTube, or go to biketalk.bike to stream every episode right on your computer. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you have a great week. And remember that nothing compares with the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.